Welcome to a special Memorial Day edition of The Local Live. I'm Maura Carlin, joined by Mike Witch, and it's all roundtable tonight. We're talking to veterans. Now, Memorial Day marks the unofficial beginning of summer, but its real meaning is a day for remembrance of men and women who perished in military service to our country. We're joined by 4 local veterans this evening, and we're going to discuss what Memorial Day means to them and also discuss issues facing veterans and their families at home and what we can do to help.
And as always, this is your chance to share memories and ask questions. This time without those pesky news stories or commercials. Is there someone you'd like to honor or a specific concern about returning soldiers? It's all on the table tonight. So let's hear from you. The contact information is on your screen, and I'll be monitoring that from time to time during the show. Maura?
Joining us right now, we have Joe Germano, who's a member of VFW Post 1156 in Larchmont and a World War II veteran. Joe also attended the 70th anniversary commemoration of Iwo Jima in 2005. Next to him, we have Burt Corwin, the commander of that VFW Post 1156 in Larchmont. Burt served in Vietnam in the U.S. Army Engineer Command 1970 to 71, and Marc Coviello, who's the founder of the Hudson Valley Hero Project and a U.S. Army combat veteran of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. And we will be joined shortly by Ron Tochi, who is the director of Westchester's Veteran Service Agency, a former New York State Assemblyman, and he was a paratrooper with the 82nd Airborne Division from 1966 to 68. Gentlemen, we are honored to have you here. You represent 3 different generations of military servicemen. Is the meaning of Memorial Day different for each generation? And Joe, I'll start with you.
Well, with me, it's losing friends. I lost a friend within a year, about a year ago, who I joined the Marine Corps with back in 1943 as a senior in high school. It was May of 1943, Samuel Albert Etree. He and I gypped school at Mamaroneck High, and we went off into New York City, my first train ride into New York City, and joined the Marine Corps. We were very lucky that the officer, the enlisting officer, told us, go back and finish high school, your orders will be in the mail the first week of August. So Babe is what his name was. He and I went back home, graduated high school as the enlisting officer said, and we took a little trip. We first went to Washington, D.C. Never been to Washington, D.C., and found myself looking at the Washington Monument. Babe, we going in there? And he said, oh, yeah. And quite exciting. From Washington, D.C., we went down to Jacksonville, Florida, where his brother was in the Marine Corps. And there were a couple other fellows from Mamaroneck that joined us for dinner one evening. I'm going to mention a name by the name of George Panessa. George Panessa was also a Marine. George was unfortunate. He did not get back to Mamaroneck. For some reason in a training session, he was in the Marine Air Corps. He was in the Bermuda Triangle, and somehow they never even found the plane. So in those days, like today, planes go down.
And you, on a day like Memorial Day, you think about the guys that you knew in the service and joined with.
Yes, I can't have a cigar with Babe, but I do enjoy the Girl Scouts when they come by my home. And on my front door, I have a wreath that they left last year. When they see that wreath, I hope they enjoy seeing it as much as I had putting it up.
Now, Burt, you were in Vietnam. What does Memorial Day mean to you? It's a different generation.
Well, I don't think, in my opinion, the generations would all view it the same way. For me, it's a time to step back and reflect on the sacrifice that's been made in all the various wars. And as the commander of the VFW, we have members from representing all those various wars. And we always have a special ceremony at Tompkins Park the morning of Memorial Day, the proper day, and a breakfast after that basically brings us together with our friends and allows us to celebrate and basically, again, appreciate the sacrifices that have been made.
And for you, Marc?
You know, honestly, I really don't think it changes too much throughout the generations. I've met veterans throughout many different generations who served in different wars, and that love of country and the love for the people we serve with and unfortunately lost really is the same sort of love throughout each generation. And those are the people that we think about on Memorial Day. It certainly isn't a day to just have a barbecue or just to have a day off of work, but it's a day to remember those who we served with and who we loved and who we lost.
Well, let me ask you, you're from the generation that chose to enlist. Do you think that makes a difference?
Yeah, I definitely think it makes a difference that those who are serving, and specifically serving in combat roles, they chose to do that. And I think that really shows that there's a supreme love of country to go over and volunteer to put yourself in that sort of situation. But I think that veterans throughout every generation, whether you volunteered or not, I think that you either went in loving your country or you certainly at least came out of it having the highest regard of respect for your fellow service members and love of country. So it really mimics each other.
At this point, maybe we can take a break for a second, and our other guest is here, and we'll seat him during this break, and then we'll be right back. So stay tuned. We've got more coming up with our veterans on our Memorial Day special of The Local Live.
You're watching The Local Live on LMC-TV.
Hi, I'm State Senator George Latimer, and I encourage you to watch every week The Local Live. I was going to say something like, I live in Rye, but if I lived in Larchmont and Mamaroneck, I would watch The Local Live every week. And I just remind. Thank you.
I'm Nancy Seligson, Mamaroneck Town Supervisor, and you are watching The Local Life on LMC-TV.
You're watching The Local Live,
the only news show on Larchmont and Mamaroneck on LMC-TV.
Okay, we're now joined by our final guest, Ron Tochi, who is also a veteran from Vietnam, and he was a former New York State Assemblyman and is now Director of Westchester's Veterans Service Agency. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
And I'd like to start by asking what Memorial Day means to you.
Well, you know, a lot of people confuse Memorial Day with Veterans Day. People should understand that Memorial Day is truly the most solemn day of all the military holidays. It's the day we really commemorate and try to remember the sacrifices of those that never came back, people who died in battle. And they're the true heroes, and those are the people we truly should try to emulate. They died for what they believed, and if they were to come back, they would have lived what they truly believed was the American creed. So it's a special day for me.
Are there people in particular that you think about?
I think about all of them. I've been privileged in my career to have met so many special people, particularly those of the greatest generation, who I thought just were truly special and named appropriately. I can't imagine young people, 17, 18 years old, coming out of a depression, going off to war, coming back, and then not complaining and not really having anything but building the communities in the country and just being grateful that they were living in America. Those are the special people, really.
Well, you were at Vietnam, so veterans, as I recall reading about, weren't always treated with such respect when they came back. Has it changed?
It has changed dramatically. You know, we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the beginning of the Vietnam War now. And it was not a good time to be serving in the military during the Vietnam conflict, to say the least. People kind of threw out the baby with the bathwater. They were anti-war, and that kind of evolved into being anti-veteran, which was unfortunate. But it may have taken 50 years, but that attitude has changed now. So they did make a big difference. Today we respect these people that are serving in the military. They're looked at as special, and they're treated a lot differently. The problem is still with the bureaucrats in Washington and Albany and all the other states.
Well, we're going to get to that in a moment, but Marc, I want to ask you, how do you think veterans of your generation feel when they're coming home in terms of how they're being treated by the public?
I was very welcomed when I came home. I think that, you know, my friends and family were very proud of me. I know that a colleague of yours, Nelson Rivera, he's the Dutchess County Veteran Services Director. He's extremely good with the veterans, and they have tons of veterans programs that the county's run. Very helpful. People were very good to me. And that's not to say that there isn't people out there that still, unfortunately, they get spit on sometimes. I mean, there's stories out there of veterans coming off you know, an airplane in a uniform and still getting spit on. It happens, but it's a very small minority, and it's nothing like it was in Vietnam, thank God. But I was very welcomed, and I'm thankful for that.
Well, it must be hard to transit, as happy as it is to transition back home.
Oh, yeah, that was the hardest.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was extremely difficult transitioning. I got out of Afghanistan and out of the Army at the relatively the same time, so in a combat environment, coming back to the U.S., extremely difficult. And you're still in that mindset that you were in for a very long time, in that combat mindset. So that's a very hard and difficult thing to become accustomed to, driving in a regular car and not a Humvee or an armored vehicle, and people being around you are friendly and they're not your enemy. So that's hard. And also, even getting out of the military was just as hard, transitioning back into being a civilian where there's a lot less structure. So a lot of the times you'll see combat veterans who come back from combat and they'll come back and get out of the military, and they kind of lose their way sometimes because that reintegration is just so difficult that sometimes people have a very hard time to cope with it.
So what do you gentlemen think would be the most important thing you could do for a returning veteran?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I think Marc's generation benefited from what happened to Vietnam, the people returning from Vietnam. I think the country learned from that, basically, the ability to separate, as I say, the warrior from the war. And I think his generation is a benefit of that increased sensitivity to that differentiation. The other thing with Vietnam, when you came back from Vietnam, most people rotated, came back, returned on what they used to call the Great Silver Bird. Great Silver Bird came into, trying to remember the name of the air base in California. You'd separate out of the service and there was a sign, you'd walk out and say, "Welcome back, America's proud of you," and you just walk out the door. So there really was very little attempt at all to follow up, just goodbye. And I know I personally went, my career, I was started as a teacher at the University of Maryland, and I had more in common with my students. Many of them had served than I had with the faculty. It was very, very interesting.
Okay, and that must be a very tough to come home to nothing. So what is it that they get now, and what could we be doing that they need that they're not getting?
It's a lot different today. There are a lot fewer. There were about 9 million GIs that served during the Vietnam conflict, 3 million actually boots on the ground in country. Of that 3 million, there's only 850,000 left alive, principally because of Agent Orange, the cancer ravages. So unfortunately, you know, we learned from all the mistakes we made at that time, but we learned a lot more about post-traumatic stress and so on. And today, there are a myriad of challenges facing these young troops coming back, but we do have all the programs you can imagine. I find the biggest problem is that a lot of people don't know that the services are available to them, and when they get out, we find them when they're in trouble. If we had the ability to change the DOD, the Department of Defense policy, that would allow at least governmental agencies that are focused on veteran services to know who these people are 120 days before they get out, we could interview them, we could make them aware that we're there for them and their families, and please stay in touch with us, and we could be very helpful.
Well, let's use this time, some of it, to tell where you can go for help or information.
Well, anybody getting out, I always tell them the first thing you should do is go to a VFW or American Legion Hall, talk to people who are in your community, and they'll tell you who a lot of these people are. In our county, I believe Westchester County, we're ahead of almost every county in the state. We have outreach programs. We've got a Patriot Housing program. We pride ourselves in knowing that there's no chronically homeless vet more than 24 hours on the street throughout this entire county. That's unparalleled. The hardest part is finding jobs for people, but a lot of these problems problems that they face are because of chronic problems that they experience. So it's very difficult to place people, you know, in employment positions where they can function, but we're there to help them. So I would advise anybody to get on the phone and call the County Veteran Service Agency or go see your local veteran chapter, be it of your choice, DAV, American Legion, whatever. And we can find help for you.
All the organizations, Ron's organization, but the VFW, the American Legion, the DAV, all of them have a small set of what are called service officers. And the role of the service officer, whether it's for somebody in Marc's generation or whether it's in somebody in Joe's generation, their purpose in life is to basically listen to the person's story, get their documentation, and make sure that they're receiving all the benefits that they're entitled. As Ron said, you've got to make that connection, help them make that connection by new people just coming back, the young people, by going even to a VFW or American Legion, they can start them on that road.
I'm interested, what role does the Veterans Administration play in this? You were talking about the DOD. Is this a criticism of the Veterans Administration or the DOD?
No, the Department of Defense is separate from the Veterans Administration. The Veterans Administration obviously conduct the biggest healthcare facility in probably the world. And they do a decent job. I mean, I don't hear too many complaints about the actual healthcare in a facility, one of their hospitals. Problem is waiting times, and they get frustrated, you know, and they get shuffled around. And the big problem with the VA is that we wait too long for people who are filing for a claim for disability compensation, pension, and so on. So we help them, you know, go through that morass of red tape. But at the same time, I find that the health care is good.
If you can get it, or when you get it.
When you get it. Now, the feds have cut back on a lot of these services. They make it income eligible now, and so on and so forth. Oh. But if a veteran really needs help and he has no resources, we can hook them in, or anybody anywhere that really knows what they're doing could make sure that they get the kind of services and help that they need.
Are there VA hospitals in Westchester?
There are. They have what they call a VISN. It's a Veterans Integrated Network Service System, and that goes from Jersey all the way up to Massachusetts and Vermont. But in our area, we have Kingsbridge Medical Center in the Bronx on Kingsbridge Road, which is one of the biggest in the country. And we also have Montrose in Cortland, and we have Castle Point, which is in Dutchess County, but they're all integrated. If we don't provide services at one, we send them to another, and so on, and back and forth. And then there are a lot of clinics, White Plains, Yonkers, New York, and so on, for things that can be done on an outpatient basis. So we have the services. They're there.
And are they provided for life to veterans?
If you are service-connected, meaning that you have some kind of a disability with a rating where you're getting a pension from the government, that should be almost for life. There may be a re-examination if you improve, which is another VA problem that we experience. We had people that had cancer, and they went for treatment, and they said they were cancer-free, so they took their compensation away from them and say, well, you're cured now. But that's not the case, and we usually file for appeals and reviews, and they get it back. But again, it's important for them to understand they have to come to an advocate. We're advocates. We're not the VA itself. We're advocates for the veteran service agencies.
Now, often people want to know what they can do, the public can do, to support veterans. I gather jobs is very important.
Jobs is a big thing. I think going to your local organizations, though, is big. We have organizations like the VFW or, you know, mine, like the Hudson Valley Hero Project, that does work with veterans in the local areas. So just local residents getting involved in those organizations is a big deal. Depending on what you're looking to do, they all do different things. Like with mine, the Hudson Valley Hero Project, we focus a lot on benevolent assistance. So that's basically whatever the veteran needs, we try and help with. We've done a lot with giving away college scholarships. I think education's a big thing, especially we were talking about reintegration and finding jobs and finding work. I think that education, when a veteran coming out, getting into college, is a big deal, so we can get that education and get a job. But yeah, I think for a resident that wants to help out with veterans, just contact your local organizations and see what they do and see what you're interested in doing.
The VFW Post 1156, I think is somewhat unique in the kinds of things we do. Our main focus is service to veterans and service to the community. And as part of that service is basically vetting charities, most of them national, but some local as well, and making contributions. And basically over the last 6 years, we have contributed $180,000 to community charities, local veterans charities, and national charities. So we are in a very good position to give people guidance because we've gone through the vetting process.
Because some people are gun-shy given what came out about the Wounded Warrior Project, which sounded wonderful, but don't want to hear how they're spending 40% of their funds.
They fixed themselves. They fired the top 3 executives, and things are going to get better because they do a lot of good things, but that was not proper what they did.
So your VFW post can help people determine what?
I get inquiries all the time from different people about charities. Is this charity good? Is that charity? I'm not saying that we know all of them, but our main focus is basically charitable donations to support veterans charities, and most of our focus over the last few years has been on post 9/11 veterans and their families. So I think we have a pretty good idea of what's good and what's not. And I serve on the Westchester County Veterans Advisory Board, and that provides a lot of information to bring back on what, that's I think where I first heard about the Wounded Warriors.
You touched on the families of returning veterans.
It's very important.
Can we talk about that? Because it often doesn't get discussed other than it's wonderful to have them home, but it's not as simple as that, is it?
One of the things we discuss at a lot of our meetings is the stress that a troop goes through in combat, especially. We would think that the family experiences the same problems, worrying and constantly caring and thinking about what's going on. We have a project called the Veteran Family Appreciation Project in Westchester County. Reach out to families who have someone serving in the military to make them understand we're there for them too. We know what they're going through. We want to honor them for their service, and at the same time, if they have any kind of problems, be it psychological, financial, or whatever it might be, we can help them probably solve some of their problems. And that would bring some peace of mind to the troop who's serving, knowing that the family has somebody they can call.
Right.
And the idea is that they will then talk to the troop serving, be it a son, a daughter, or what, a mother or father, and say to them, hey, these people have been very, very helpful, so maybe we can gain their confidence and gain the identification of the troop and start to communicate before they get out so we don't find them in trouble. One of the biggest American travesties right now is that every day 40 veterans kill themselves. 40 every single day. That is absolutely unacceptable. And it's because they just don't know where to go for help. And we owe them, more than what we're doing for them right now.
Happen within a certain period of time? Is there a danger period, in the first 60 days, or can you hit you any time?
I would say, well, first I just wanted to piggyback off of the family piece. When I was in Afghanistan, just days before Christmas time, I grew up with my father. We were very, very close. My father was very stressed out that I was over there, very upset that I wasn't going to be around for the holidays. And the man literally had a heart attack. He was in the hospital. He was so stressed out about me being over there that he ended up having a heart attack. So it's very stressful. He's fine now. He's
good. That was my next question.
He's fine now, but it's very stressful for the family. Very, very stressful. Now, the time period coming back and the suicide, which is completely unacceptable, 100% unacceptable, and I think the VA needs to work on that a little bit more. And I think what you said about DOD reaching out to the county services, that's a big deal, so you guys could have that outreach. But me personally, I think it was the first 6 months coming back from Afghanistan was just such a tough reintegration period. I think 6 months was really about the time for me that it was just so difficult. And when I got over that hump, that 6 month hump, I felt that I was a little bit downhill from there. But that's just me personally. Uphill, yeah. I think that it was, that's just me personally, but it really varies from veteran to veteran. I think that you could kind of ignore these things for a long time, 10 years down the road, and it just comes back and it hits you.
They don't go away.
Yeah, it does not go away.
Is it easier or harder if you're returning to a spouse and children?
you know, I'm single. I didn't have a spouse and child to come home to, but I had many friends that did, and I think that's very difficult for them, just speaking to them about coming back to the home life, and they've been away for a long time, so the mother was acting as both parents, and maybe the child's a bit uncomfortable sometimes. It is a weird thing to come back to that, so you have to kind of find your place again. So I can't personally speak to it, but from the people that I'm close with, they said it is difficult.
Is the divorce rate higher among returning veterans?
I don't know if we have those statistics, but suggested the first 6 months is very, very difficult, but if you don't fix it in the first 6 months, it's going to be there forever. So it's really, you know, something that has to be addressed right away. And I would think that the support services and a family would be helpful. He had a father who cared, mother, you know, father, wife, even the kids. I think that makes it easier than someone coming back with nobody.
Would it be a good idea to have someone come visit you at home, within your first month?
We do all those things. We have peer-to-peer, which is a tremendous network of programs that really work. I mean, you know, one veteran talking to another veteran who experienced and went through all these things really makes a big, big difference. But our problem, again, is we find somebody when they're so despaired that they decided that they want to kill themselves. Or, you know, they tried something crazy and they become alcoholic, they become drug addicted, or substance abuse,
well, I think
whatever.
the suicide problem is not just Afghan.
No,
Iraq.
that goes back to Vietnam. Yeah.
But there's still those older veterans are part of that statistic.
Absolutely.
Currently.
Yeah.
We have
People
to
who are
make
still dealing with.
the bottom line. We have to make people more aware of these people who come back. They're heroes. You know, you treat them like heroes, which they are. But at the same time, you know, they should be talked to. They should be referred to the right people, the right professionals, services, and so on. And you know, today I tell this to everybody. We only have about 880,000 active military personnel in all branches of service, taking care of 330 million Americans, all volunteer.
Right.
First time since the Revolutionary War. And when people talk about we owe them a debt of gratitude, we certainly do. But unfortunately, the actions never match the rhetoric we hear from Washington and the states and so on. There's no reason why there should be shortfalls in medical budgets and so on and so forth.
So what should the federal and state governments do?
Well, we need somebody who really cares about the military and understands their problems and really addresses it in the right way. And then Congress will follow. You know, after World War II, almost 75% of all elected officials, federal, state, local, were veterans.
Right.
Today, it's under 10%.
Well, I think this
So
is
out
the
of sight,
first
out of mind.
election where none of the candidates at the moment are actually have had any military service.
Well, that may be true, but you don't have to be a military hero to be a true patriot. I know a lot of people that didn't serve that are tremendously supportive of veteran services and veterans themselves, so just need the right people.
I'd like to sort of maybe take a different perspective. There's a lot of positives. The increased sensitivity of the public, the services that Ron's talking about. For me, it's basically the privilege. I mean, I really wasn't, as a youngster, I wasn't around a lot of World War II veterans. And I agree with Ron, the greatest. I mean, had the pleasure over the last 20 years in the VFW to spend time with guys like Joe, Tommy Santoro, Tony Marcella, Stanley Pleasant. I mean, these are indeed great fellows, great patriots, great people who love their community, who love their comrades. So that to me is, I'll never lose sight of that. And
well, that's lovely. And I'm actually going to let you tell us a little about an honor you received. You actually went to Iwo Jima for the 70th.
Well, before I get into that, I'd like to touch on each of their talk. Many years ago, I guess it was 1944, 24 communication Marines, including officers, went up to the Brooklyn Navy Yard to commission a brand new ship. It was a communication ship. The ship took a while to get ready out of Brooklyn Navy Yard, and I would go home, bring some of my Marine buddies back home, have dinner, and come back. Mm-hmm. Finally, our ship was at sea. We go through the canal, great. They drop us off in San Diego for some more amphibious training. And before you know it, the ship is in dry dock, getting some more sophisticated radio equipment and what have you. Marines come up, catch the ship. We go out to Hawaii. The sailors are giving us the business. We were on liberty. What were you guys doing? Well, before you know it, we had a 2-day leave. The Navy had taken over the Royal Hawaiian Hotel in Hawaii, and we had a great time for 2 days. As we come back to our ship, we see 3 stars flying. Man, we asked the officer of the day, who we got? We had Admiral Richard K. Turner, commander of Amphibious Forces Pacific Fleet, the big man, real big man. That was his flagship. We're off to sea. We hit, I think we went to Lady or something. That doesn't matter, but I'd like to get to getting prepared to go on into Iwo Jima. We got into Guam, and who comes aboard? Holland Smith, a Marine general who had a good reputation with amphibious training and troops in the Pacific. Well, he's aboard, and before you know it, his staff comes aboard, and we have a dress rehearsal. Real bombs, real planes, and what have you, over Guam, Saipan, and that whole area. Ships galore. It was ships like cars on 42nd Street, Times Square. Well, we go up. February 19th, 1945, the Marines go ashore on Iwo Jima. Tough battle. On the 23rd of February, Hugh Gumpel, out of his sight, he's on the bridge. He was a signalman on this ship. Mm-hmm. He spots a flag going up, old pipe and what have you, and calls down from the bridge. The flag is flying. Man, all the brass come up. And I've got a letter from Hugh here, signed by Hugh, mentioning about all the brass. Aboard the ship was, at this time, Secretary of the Navy, James Forrestal. Mm. Well, before you know it, that flag came down, and aboard the ship was Joe Rosenthal, the Associated Press photographer. He went ashore, took the picture, and they claimed the film went off to Guam or somewhere. It was developed aboard our ship, and we never knew what this would mean to our country. Now, when Joe Rosenthal took that picture, you can rest assured the 24 Marines would get a snapshot of it or a picture of it, which we did. After we, I'm not going to go into the rest, maybe no. But I want to touch on each of them. Mm-hmm. Admiral Turner left our ship and went on to the Missouri. This is when the war was over. They were going to sign the contract and the treaty. And before you know it, he orders his staff back to Hawaii. The El Dorado is going back to Hawaii to drop off Admiral Turner's staff. Then we need to go into dry dock again in San Francisco at Mare Island. And underneath the Golden Gate Bridge, the 24 Marines and the officers are there chatting and what have you, and our CO, who was a captain, I believe, at the time, issued our orders. I get lucky. I get Philadelphia Navy Yard. Great. I'm there, Philadelphia Navy Yard. I'm working 4 hours on, 20 off. $5 bill, I can take 3 days off. And I'm home in Mamaroneck. Quite a bit. Not in uniform, I'm for some reason. So I'm having dinner one night. Get a knock on the door, and one of my neighbors comes in by the name of John Civittini. John Civittini. I said, John, what's up? He says, my mother wants to see you. I says, let me finish what I got, and I'll come with you. So sure and heck, I go over. His mother operates a little grocery store, but she owned a lot of property in Mamaroneck, in the Fenimore Road section. Well, before you know it, John takes care of the store. She has me in the back room, and she said, Joe, I have that service station next door. I would like you to operate it. I would like to give you a lease. I said, Mrs. Civittini, I'd love to do it. Community reaching out. Not knowing what she's doing, she's reaching out, taking care of me. So before you know it, she hands me the key. I've got the key in my hand. This is great. So the next, I called back. I'm going to take another couple of days off. Sure enough, I had a good CO at Philadelphia Navy Yard. He was terrific. And I'm out in front of this garage, looking it over, and a gentleman comes up in dress suit like Ron, looking handsome, and Abby was looking the place over. And I said to him, may I help you? He says, I don't believe so, but I said, what are you doing here? He says, I'm the Mobled Salesman. I don't know if I should close this place down. It hasn't been operated and what have you. I said, I'm the new leasee. I'm going to run this place. Before you know it, helping a veteran, we get to talking. I didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. A load of gasoline. In those days, I don't know what it cost. He says, I'll give you 30 days just by speaking to me, coming up with maybe I'm good for the money. He says, but in 30 days, you must pay for this load of gasoline. I says, fine. That sounds good. I get around town, look up some 4F boys that were left behind, got them into the business. Raked the gravel, before you know it, painted up the place. I was in business. I went back to Philadelphia Navy Yard, did my duty, came back, and before you know it, I was ready to buy the place after a couple of years. And Mrs. Civittini said to me, Joe, I'd love to sell it to you, but I own all this property. I do not want to break it up. And I'm cleaning a windshield, pumping gasoline into my broker's car. And his name is Marc Stern, was a real estate and insurance broker. I says, Mr. Stern, I'd love to buy that piece of property across the street there. He says, don't you dare to buy that piece of property across the street. I'll call you at 3 o'clock. You must be up on Mamaroneck Avenue when you retire. Believe it or not, he was so right. And I was able to retire on Mamaroneck Avenue. I can go into a lot more during the course of my being in business, how the veterans that came in all needed my service from Mamaroneck, because
and you got service from others in the community. So we do have to wrap up, but I'm going to give everyone one last chance to tell about their organizations and where they can give help. Burt, I'll start with you.
Well, our organization's VFW Post 1156, as I said.
Is there a website?
Yes, there is. You can do a search on
Google or
just a Google search of basically VFW Larchmont, and it'll pull it up. And it has basically a lot of information about our activities, our service, and we're always looking for a few good men, just like the Marines, but looking for those who basically are interested in service.
Okay, and you, Marc?
Yes, I'm the president of the Hudson Valley Hero Project. That's hudsonvalleyheroproject.org. We focus on giving away college scholarships. We've helped paid for transportation costs for a veteran who was dealing with leukemia. We bought a van for a paraplegic veteran who was just going around in a wheelchair place to place. We got him some transportation, had the lift gate and the whole deal. So really any veteran who needs help with any particular thing, we do a lot of benevolent assistance. Every dollar that we take in as a donation. It all goes to veterans. No one takes a salary, so 100% of it goes to the veterans. So if you want any more information, feel free to email us.
Okay. Ryan, you want to give us your organization?
Westchester Veteran Service Agency. We're an all-purpose service agency. We provide services and direction for anything that a veteran may need or the family of a veteran and those serving actively now. And this Sunday, which is Memorial Day weekend, at Playland in Rye, any Westchester veteran and family, sons, daughters, nieces, nephews, grandchildren, everybody's invited to Playland. It's free parking, free admission, free food, free entertainment, and free rides for the kids all day on Sunday. So if you want to, our number is 995-2145. You can call tomorrow and we'll provide you with all the direction. And God bless all of those good people who never came back.
And thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Can the local live give my pet ostrich the power of human speech?
What? No.